Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's Feature Spotlight, introducing the new items database and cost books for construction online estimating. I'm Holly Gibson, Senior Product Specialist here at UDA Technologies, joined by my colleague Jordan Davis.
Hello, everyone.
And we couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. Now, if you're new to UDA Technologies, or Construction Online. Construction Online is our award-winning web-based project management and estimating platform trusted by over 650,000 construction professionals in over 75 countries all over the world. Construction Online helps you manage more than $80 billion in projects every single day. And of course, one of the things that people really love about Construction Online is the estimating and financial management platform. So we're really excited to talk today about the brand new items database and cost books that we have introduced in Construction Online Financials. Today we'll talk about how to create estimates in minutes, not hours, with intuitive cost book item entry right into your estimate. We'll look at how you can centralize your company's costs to ensure the most accurate estimates possible. We'll show you how you can build cost books your way with fully customizable folder structures and of course pricing and all sorts of information for your items. And then we'll also look at how to get that data into the system quickly with pre-formatted Excel templates. So we've made it really easy for you to pull your information in.
Now, for those of you who are just joining your first UDA Technologies webinar, let me be the first to say welcome. We'd love to have you here. For those of you who are not joining us for the first time, you're pretty familiar with what I'm about to point out. If you take a look at the GoToWebinar panel, there's a section titled Questions. Holly and I really love to run interactive webinars, and we really especially love answering your questions as we work through our webinar topics. Now, with the cost books in particular, I suspect there's going to be quite a few questions today. Please feel free to send those our way. Our colleague Sydney Dorsey is going to be joining us on the keyboard, and we'll be flagging questions and calling them up as we work through, but we're also going to spend a little bit of time at the end of the webinar to answer questions as well. So throw them our way. We'd really love to answer your questions and make sure you have the information you need to build fantastic cost books in Construction Online. And without further ado, let's take a look at what our team has been up to.
Well, I'm really excited to show everyone the brand new company cost books and how that interacts with estimating. It really is something that will streamline your estimating workflow. It's probably one of the bigger changes to our financial management toolset that we've introduced in a while, and it's really been designed from the very beginning to help you focus on the things that we know are important in estimating. We want you to be able to work faster, get things done quickly, and we also want you to be able to have a focus on accuracy. And so the cost books and items database that you can now use in your Construction Online financial tools really will help you to do just that. Now, we thought we would start today really by showing you a little bit of the result first, and then we'll take a look at setup. And I wanted to do this because I really think that when you see how easy it is to get these items into your estimate, you're definitely going to want to go and set up your database. So we want to take a look at both parts of that so you can see not only how to get things set up for your company, but really let's start by looking at what that's going to do for you. Why would we want to set that up, and how is that going to work as we are working in our estimates?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And really starting with the cost books is really straightforward once you've actually built out even just one item inside of a cost book. In Construction Online, you'll notice a new option will be available on the estimate sidebar, and that is the option to enable cost book items. Now, what's really great about this is that you don't have to select just one cost book. We'll get to that later, but as soon as you turn on the cost book option switch, you'll notice there's a new option when you're adding items into your estimates. So we're working inside of our site work category right now. This is going to let us start to add in new items and start to really build out the true itemized costs for different components of our estimate here. Now, in the past, when we were adding new items into Construction Online, we were really just typing in text. And that option is still there. If you turn on cost book items, but you want to add in something that's not part of a cost book yet, you can definitely do that. But you'll notice a new option available when you start typing. the estimate system, and really you are starting to search your cost books and all of your cost books to pull in the items that you need or your estimators need to build accurate estimates. And we're really leveraging a lot of the information that we've already built out inside of the cost book themselves to make sure that we're getting accurate unit costs, making sure that we don't have to spend the time going in and setting up classifications, which you can see are flowing in. You'll notice that our unit costs are starting to be added to the estimate, and now we can just go in and set up things like the quantities. How much are we looking at in terms of demolition? It looks like this is probably going to be based around something like square footage that we might need here. Maybe we have some type of other units that we would add in as well, but it's really, really simple to actually use the cost books inside of the estimates. You don't have to pull up a new window or try and search through another component and copy and paste over. It's a really, really seamless process.
It definitely is. So let's take a closer look at what that looks like as you're actually building out an estimate. So we're working here in an estimate where we're already using an existing template. I thought it would be fun to really show everyone how this could speed up the process though of creating a brand new estimate. So if we wanted to do that, let's just say by hand, I'm going to go ahead and just create an estimate. We'll use our 3-level structure with a standard calculation. You can see here we've got some nice tax choices. We'll go ahead and go with our default settings there, and then we'll just get our estimate built. Now, one thing that you're going to notice as we start to pull items in from our database is that it is speeding up partially just by pre-populating a good bit of information for us. So let's say that we want to go ahead and add in a few categories. So we'll add our planning here. Maybe we'll add our site work here. And let's add in a couple of additional ones. So we'll do maybe a foundation. And we'll come here and add maybe a framing category. So already, I mean, it's already pretty fast and easy to start building out your estimate. But where you're going to see such a difference with the cost book is as we go in and start adding our items. So let's maybe call this site prep. Maybe we'll call this one some sort of demolition. We could keep going here. Now, like Jordan mentioned, we want to make sure that our cost book items are enabled, which is my default setting. That's what I like to keep, so it's going to remember that setting and make sure that those are turned on. And then just watch how easy it is to start adding in items. Now, rather than typing in new items or trying to, like you mentioned, reference some sort of different sheet somewhere for cost, if I'm looking at demolition, I can just start searching for demo or however I have my cost book set up. You'll notice that when you're searching, you can see not only the name of the item, but you can see structurally where it is in our cost book. We can see the class and unit cost, as well as the unit that's going to be pulled into the estimate. So maybe let's say we're going to use this item here. So notice as soon as I select that, it does go ahead and fill in for me that material classification as we had it in the database. It goes ahead and fills in my unit cost along with my unit. And now all I need to do is come in and fill out the quantity for this item and we'll be good to go. And really we can keep doing that just to continue adding items here. Now, one thing that I see people do, and we'll take a look in just a moment at how to create this structure for your company, but you may have cost books that you have enabled perhaps for different vendors that you're working with. Maybe you've imported those price lists. Maybe you have a master list of rates for your company that you want to be able to reference. One really nice thing that's happening here is that as we are searching through the cost book, it's going to be searching all of those at the same time. So it's not searching only one book. It really is going to search your entire database to give you the matches that you need. And you can just scroll through this until you see the item that you want or keep typing. It'll go ahead and narrow that down. And that's really it. We just, keep searching and selecting and we're able to pull those right in. You can very quickly build an accurate estimate with costs that you've had time to review in a fraction of the time it would normally take, doing this by hand.
Yeah, and there's another way you can search the cost books as well. Now, of course, typing in is a really efficient way of finding a specific item. But Holly, you'd mentioned, well, let's say that we did have a specific cost book we were trying to track an item down from. We can actually click this little icon here, which will open a new window for us to look through our cost books. We can see we have a few different cost books we can select here. If you're working with multiple vendors or suppliers, of course, you'd be able to move through and select the specific supplier you were looking for. And from there, you could start to drill down into the actual cost book structure itself. Now, of course, we're going to cover how you can structure your own cost books and really set this up quickly, almost as quickly as building the estimate now, but this really does give you a great snapshot in here in case you aren't exactly sure of the phrasing or the way that someone else might have typed in the information. This is a really great reference tool for your estimators. And of course, we would just select an item that we needed here and insert that item directly into the estimate. Simple as that.
Now, one thing that it's also nice to know as we're looking in our estimates, so a few things that we've made sure of are going to work really well for you. One is, what happens if we want to continue using those best practice estimate templates, but also take advantage of the database. And you can definitely do that. You don't have to start from a blank estimate in order for this to work really well. You can actually, use this in conjunction with the template. And even better, if you add items from the cost book right into the estimate template that you like to use, those items will populate over and already be linked when you generate the new estimate. So it's a really nice workflow because you can use the tool in so many versatile ways, but it dovetails in really nicely with the templates because you also have this really great refresh cost button. So what this will allow you to do is update the cost book to make sure that you're using the most recent cost. One of the benefits that we wanted to cover today, in addition to being able to create estimates faster, is to really be able to centralize your company's costs to ensure accuracy in the estimates. And so the refresh option is going to really play into that because we're able to update our company's cost in one place, but have that go out into different estimates and templates that we're using really, really smoothly.
Yeah, Holly, this is a really relevant topic. I was just speaking with a client yesterday, and well, it's not just one client I've had this conversation with, but lumber prices have been so variable. I mean, the prices and quotes are changing day to day to day. And we were discussing how it's very critical for their estimators to know what the most recent quote was. And oftentimes, that leads to having to contact different supply yards or different lumber yards multiple times a week. Well, if one person contacts the yard and gets a price update that's, let's say, just a little bit higher than what's currently in the items database, they can actually update that item's cost within the database, and then the next person in line can pull the most recent pricing data. That way you make sure that even if it's not the exact amount right away, your ballpark numbers aren't so wildly off that you make a huge mistake and really potentially make a horrible error when you're putting an estimate together. Now, of course, for items whose pricing doesn't change day to day, the cost book becomes even better because you can keep the cost books updated on, say, a monthly or maybe quarterly basis, which we have found is another effective way of using the cost books as well.
So let's take a look at where we're going to go to actually build and update our cost book. So we've looked at how to get those items into your estimate. We want to take a look though at where you would manage those. You can definitely see your cost books from the estimate screen just by selecting View Cost Books. So that's something that you can do really easily here. But to actually build them and go ahead and manage the data, you want to look in the drop down in the top right of your screen. You'll have an option now that says Company Cost Books. So that's where we'll go to actually manage our company's cost books and add them in if we need to here. Now you'll notice this view is really intended for building and managing that cost database. You'll notice that in my account I currently have 2 cost books, but if I wanted to add several more, you can really, there's no limit to how many books of items you can have. So if I wanted to have one for each vendor, we'll call this vendor A, and then maybe another one for vendor B. I can definitely do that. So these are all really, really easy to kind of get in. And then once you have created a cost book, then you can actually customize this with folder structures and things like that. So to give you an idea of what you might want to do, we'll just take a look at my Gibson Construction book of standard cost, which I've chosen here to organize based on different divisions that I might want to use in my estimate. So I have a section for concrete pricing, masonry work, framing, etc. And so I've chosen to go with a pretty simple and straightforward structure. I think this is a really easy to use way to do it. And then within each of these sections, then I have my items. And if we need to add one, you can just click add item. So if you need to add one on the fly to like a cost book that you're managing, that's again, really easy thing to do here. You can also do things like edit or delete these. So if we needed to update the cost, say on this brick veneer wall, maybe I'm going to change this to $6.50 instead of $5. You can just come in, add the new cost, and go ahead and save that.
Yeah, that's how simple it is to actually update the unit cost or the unit pricing. Now I can already hear some questions coming our way. We will show where this option is, but you definitely have control over who can edit cost books, and that's separate from those people who can actually use the cost books. So it's very, very likely that you'll want your estimators to use the cost books, but not all of your estimators should be able to update the pricing that everyone else is using. And that's easily achievable. We've actually put a toggle in place for you to have control over that.
That's right. Another thing that's really convenient is that there is an option to archive the cost book. And what this does is it means that the cost book items will no longer show up in searches that you're doing within the estimate, but the data remains. So it's a really nice way to have access to historical data, or especially if you're getting regular price lists from vendors and you want to go back and look at what their pricing was, say this time last year. Maybe you name your cost book vendor A and then, fourth quarter 2020 or something like that. That way you can archive them as they are updated, so create new ones, and you'll still be able to go back and reference those historical costs.
Yeah, so in combination with the second tool inside of that right-click menu, you can actually copy the cost book, which will essentially create a duplicate of the costs. You can change the name and say, well, maybe this is going to be coming up for Q4 2020, like you mentioned, Holly, and then we archive our older version of the cost book to really lock in, well, where were we? What were our historical price last year? This also gives you a what-if control in a way, where you can set up certain costs in one regard, and then maybe you set like a high-end cost book where you go through and you bump the costs up by like 20% or something like that for those estimates where you might want a little bit more margin or leverage built into the estimate itself. Now, as for actually building a cost book from scratch, it's also something we've tried to make very simple. Now, those folders or divisions we were setting up could really be whatever you want them to be, right? They're not locked in place. There's no one set way of handling the costs, and we think that's an advantage. There are so many different approaches to estimating that end up working out well, and we wanted to support that. When it comes to adding items to the cost book as well, we wanted a quick add function instead of having that modal pop up every single time for you to just add a new item in. Of course, from here, though, if you did want to drill down and actually get into the finer points or the finer details in the item itself, you absolutely could take that approach as well. Now, a best practice recommendation that we have would actually be to align your folders inside of your cost books with your categories and your subcategories inside of ConstructionOnline. This will make searching much easier. If your estimators don't exactly know the item names, but they know the name of the division or the subdivision, they could just search for that. They'll find the folders and all the items contained within.
That's right. So it's so easy. Another common question that we get, and something that we built in to make it, certainly easier, is that you can also, of course, import your cost books. So you have the ability here when you're creating and managing this to go ahead and import a cost book, which is just going to function like other imports you may have worked with in ConstructionOnline. You'll browse to choose the file that you want to work with. So we have one prepared for us today just to show you guys how it works, but we have our cost book import. We'll go ahead and choose that, and then we'll just give it a name. So we'll call this one Gibson Fall 2020 import, and it will just go ahead and bring that information right in. You can see that it's very fast. That's important to us, that these are really fast, easy things for you to do. So this is definitely no different. Now we do support a more nested structure as well. So I've chosen to keep my cost books pretty straightforward. I find that to be easy to use, but there might be situations where you want a little additional organization. So you can actually have folders and subfolders and even subfolders. And you'll notice when you're looking at the different options for importing your cost books, there's an Excel template that you can download that will show you the exact format you need. And when you download that, you can download templates for including different levels of structure, really up to a 5-level structure here that you could import right in. So if you happen to need that type of organization, do know that it's available to you here.
Now, I saw a question come our way, Holly, and I wanted to address it now because we've kind of danced around the topic just a little bit while we were trying to show some of the basics. But somebody was asking about pricing based on certain coverage rates or certain areas or units of measure. We added in a new function into the actual cost book itself here, which is interesting in a couple of regards. One, because it's actually a newer way of inputting cost book data that's even different from our desktop software where we've had cost books for, a decade at this point?
That's right.
It's a really, really effective way of tracking the coverage rate, which lets you set up 2 different ways to factor, the actual unit costs in the cost book itself. This lets you set not only the purchase unit, right? So maybe you don't actually purchase things in terms of just one or each, but you actually purchase, let's say, something in gallons, or you purchase something in packs or boxes or rolls or whatever it might be, right? So that's your purchase unit. But that doesn't mean that you're actually, measuring or figuring out how much quantities of a material you need based on boxes. Right? This is typically going to be calculated off of some type of square footage or cubic measurements, right? Some type of area or volume is going to dictate how much of the item you should buy. And in a lot of cases, you're not going to be able to buy items in terms of each. There's certain, units of purchase that you can have. We'll call those we actually have it listed as a purchase unit, which is customizable. You can add your own purchase units if you note that the one you're looking for isn't in the list.
That's right. One thing to note about your purchase units is that the purchase units are going to align with the units that you're using in your estimate and elsewhere throughout Construction Online. So these are fully customizable. This is what is going to show up in your estimate when you import your cost book item in, because of course the estimate, we're looking to get a cost estimate and we want those units to reflect how we will actually purchase or pay for the item. Now you also have your unit of measure, which is where we would typically see things like linear feet, square feet, cubic yards, other types of measurements here. There's of course an each. These are not editable, and the reason for that is because the items database that we're looking at today, we're focusing on how this interacts with your estimate and other financial data. This database will also, in the future, interact with your takeoff functionality within Construction Online as well. So if you're using Redline Takeoff, these items will be available to you as you're doing your takeoffs, and you'll be able to assign there how we want to measure for this item, how we're going to purchase it, a rate, so that we can kind of correlate the two. And then that way your takeoff will produce results that will give you a quantity of how many you need to buy, as well as a summary of the measurements that you took. So that one is not editable. Your purchase units are editable, of course, here, and you can fully customize how this shows up to reflect, how you like to estimate for each of these items on your estimate. Now let's go ahead and go back to our estimate here. So we'll just jump back into one of the estimates that we have in Construction Online and take a look at a couple of additional items that are coming in. We've got so many great questions. I know we've covered sort of the high points that we wanted to show you today, but as we expected, there's a ton of questions, so we want to make sure that we can address as many of those as possible. A common question that I see happening here is, how does this impact, if at all, our integration with QuickBooks? Is this something that's going to create a ton of new items in my QuickBooks account? How do we line this up with the QuickBooks? And really, the answer is it couldn't be easier, but it's definitely a question that we want to go ahead and touch on.
Yeah, and I'm really, really happy to say that the items database and really the line items that we're working with inside of the estimates here, we thought ahead and knew that probably most companies that are going to be using items database functionality don't want all of the items ending up in their QuickBooks items list. So we have set our QuickBooks integration up to work in a very specific and particular way. And it's true both for our QuickBooks desktop integration through Socket, our integration application, and also for integrating with QuickBooks Online. If you're using either of those platforms and you want to integrate, but you don't want all of these items to send over to your items list, well, you don't have to change anything about what you're doing right now, because the connection point for the QuickBooks integration for both desktop and online completely ignores line items. Instead, the integration connects to the category and subcategory, or the first two levels of detail inside of the estimate, which you can see conveniently on the project totals page. So for everyone who was wondering about using the items database but not wanting to affect your QuickBooks integration or your QuickBooks items list, you're covered. You don't have to change anything about anything that you're doing right now, and you can start using the Costbooks today.
Such an easy answer. And you're right, it's really set up that way. To me, the advantage here is that it allows you to, in a lot of ways, take the best of both worlds, right? So that you have your estimate template set up in such a way where you're really standardizing the category and subcategory naming, while giving your estimators the flexibility to then come into each of these subcategory sections, pull the items that they need from the database, add those right in, and you don't have to worry that it's going to impact what's happening, on the QuickBooks side of things.
Yeah, and something that I also like to point out about the Costbooks here is that, let's see, wire transfer fees, yeah, that will work. Something that's a really neat little note here about the items is that you can absolutely tell a Costbook item versus a non-Costbook item. The Costbook item is going to be a slightly different color, and when you hover your mouse over the Costbook item as opposed to a regular item, you'll see there's an option to click. It's like a hyperlink. And if you select this, it actually will open and show you the item inside of the cost book, or all the items that actually match, as opposed to just clicking in here and seeing nothing. That's a really easy way to make sure that your estimates or your estimate templates are actually using the correct cost book item.
Now, we have had a couple of people also ask just about exports and imports. A couple of you guys, it looks like, are using our desktop ConstructionSuite software and have built cost books in there that you'd like to port over, and that's absolutely doable. In your ConstructionSuite, you'll have an option to export that out. It's going to come into an Excel file for you, and then really at that point, you would just need to tweak the formatting a bit to match the import here for ConstructionOnline, line that data up and import it right in. So that is usually a very, very quick and easy process in terms of importing from Excel, but also if you are users of ConstructionSuite, that'll be a really easy option for you also.
Now, a couple of other follow-up notes to this. If you want to use items from your estimates inside of ConstructionOnline, it's really simple to export that out and pull it into the import spreadsheet for the cost books themselves. The same is actually true for items inside of QuickBooks. If you wanted to use that as the basis for starting your cost book and then add specific line items in, it really can help you build the structure of your cost books very quickly, and then begin to add to that structure with the specific line items without worrying about sending all the line items back in to the QuickBooks items list, of course. So there are a couple of different ways to take your existing information and translate that into a really great framework or a really great start to building out your cost books.
That's right. Now I see a couple of other questions about just being able to have customizations or variations of the items that are included. You'll notice that I'm actually doing a little bit of cost book management even from this screen. I can double click on these items and adjust naming and things like that. If I have edit privileges, I can do that from right here, as well as the cost. But a couple of the questions have been along the lines of, what if we have 2 or 3 different variations of the same item, maybe different thicknesses or model numbers or things like that. And really what we would suggest there is that you just have a separate item for each of those. It's easy enough to build new items or even duplicate the ones that you have. And that's actually the approach that I've taken here. Like if you'll notice in concrete, I've got different rates, for example, for how large the slab is, or there might be different rates for, thickness, or different rates for, models that I'm using or grades of materials. So you can go ahead and build all of that in so that it's available as you're creating the estimate. You can just choose which one you need and not have to worry about making a ton of adjustments on the fly. Now, one thing too that I would like to just touch on as well is when you're adding the items in, let's say that we're adding an item and maybe we don't find what we need in the database. Maybe what I want to do is just I haven't accounted for it yet in my database, so I just want to add it in. We'll say, like 1/4 or something like that. So, whatever it is that you want to put in, if it's not in the cost book, that's okay. You're not really locked into using that. All you have to do is just tab out and it'll just save your item as usual. So you can actually use a combination method here very, very effectively.
Someone asked about the permission. How do you stop other people from editing cost books and just using the cost books? We did mention it, and I think it's worth showing how you can actually adjust the permission as well. If you were to head into your Manage Company Users dashboard inside of ConstructionOnline, you'll see there's a spot where you can manage other users' permissions. In this case, Sydney, we're going to have to come in and make sure that you can actually add, edit, and delete the company cost books. For right now, those permissions have been disabled for non-admins, but if you'd like to give edit permissions across the board for a user, all you have to do is check that company cost book permission, and they will be able to take it from there.
Now, keep in mind that even if a user can't add or edit, add to or edit the company cost books, they can still use them within the estimate. So you don't have to give someone special permission to be able to just use a cost book. Only if you want them to be able to make changes to it would you need to turn this option on. So it does allow for some really nice control here. Now, I see another great question coming in from someone who just wants to know, hey, what about, doing cost by maybe manufacturer or specs or things like that. And I think that's really the beauty of how customizable this is and how many great import and sort of easy options there are for building out the data. What we see a lot of customers do is actually request from their manufacturers or different vendors or lumber yards that they work with, just send me your updated price list. And a lot of times those are even available sometimes online, where you can just download a price list, be able to import it right in. Usually those are available in Excel sheets, so you're able to, if you can grab the data that way, reformat the Excel sheet, pull it right in. And so that's just an easy way to keep those manufacturer prices and things like that loaded into the cost book for you. So let's see, I think the only last couple of questions that we have here, a couple of people want to know what about being able to come back and watch this later. So I'm hoping that means that many of you want to get to work on building out your cost books for your company and would like to be able to reference this. As always, the recording of today's session will be available today on our events page. So that's going to be udatechnologies.com/events under on-demand webinar recording. So as soon as we have that recording available for you, we'll go ahead and post it up so that you can reference it later whenever you're setting up your cost books there.
Well, thank you all so much. It looks like we've actually covered most, if not all, of the questions today between ourselves and Sydney, who has been doing a standout job knocking out a lot of these questions today as well. We want to thank you all so much for spending some time to learn about the cost books that we've released today. We have some really, really exciting updates coming down the pipeline. Holly, I know that you kind of dropped a hint about what we're going to be doing with Takeoff and the items database. We're expecting that here in the next really couple of months. We're really, really excited for that, and we have some other really big projects in the works that we can't quite talk about now, or someone will come and hunt us down Otherwise, thank you all again for the time. If you have any additional questions, we'd love to answer those. You can reach out to myself or Holly here at UDA Technologies. Give us a call, send us an email. Let us know how we can help you be more successful as we move into the last quarter of 2020.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.